The US Interstate System has plenty of extremely important routes, but we know this comes with the other side of things, useless interstates. See, the way the interstate system was designed and built came with so much corruption, where every state and city wanted as many routes as possible to be built with federal dollars. And some states had more pull than others, so what came from this is some pretty awful routes that end up getting used by nobody. I mean, did we really need 2 routes through Wheeling, West Virginia, or a spur route to Dyersburg, Tennessee? What I'm saying is there are some highways out there that are underused, so today we're going to go state by state to check out the least used interstate in each state and if they have a story behind them. Before we get into that though, please consider subscribing to the channel. I make geography and highway content just like this every week, so if you like the video, I'd really appreciate if you would subscribe so I can keep growing. Thank you. So looking at a very nice interstate highway here, let's run through our rules. The interstate system is not the best group at releasing stats publicly, so the last time something like this was released is in 2011, but it has some amazing stats and most of them still check out, so it's good enough, trust me. I'm going off of mean annual average daily traffic between rural and urban areas combined, which means it splits the highways up into segments, which I assume are 1-mile segments, and show us the average daily traffic per segment. So with that being said, let's go all the way from the busiest, least busy interstate all the way to the least used in the country, starting with number 50, Hawaii. Hawaii has H3, the Cross Island Freeway, with one of the most beautiful routes in the country. There are only urban freeways in the state, so it's no surprise that it's up at 72.8 thousand drivers per segment. Next, Kentucky interestingly places low on this list with I-24 at just 61,000 drivers per segment in the rural west region of the state. Delaware places low on another thing, with I-495 at 60.2 thousand, and Nevada's lack of useless interstates leads the long I-80 to somehow lead the list at 55.8 thousand. Then next, Colorado doesn't have many underused freeways, so I-76 takes the cake with its rural routing, at 53.4 thousand. Before 45th place, this leads me to be able to point out that in this case, being low on the list is actually a good thing. It may mean your traffic sucks, but the way I see it, it shows the designs were efficient and placed in the correct location. So anyway, moving on, we have I-295 in Rhode Island at 52.8 thousand, but then we have an interesting one with I-444 in Oklahoma at 50.5 thousand. This is an unsigned route on the south and east portions of the Tulsa Beltway, and even though most people don't know it exists, it still carries a decent bit of traffic. 43rd place is I-393 in Concord, New Hampshire, a freeway with a weird route that really doesn't need to exist at 45,000. Arkansas is next with I-440 in the east part of Little Rock at 44.8 thousand. I find that one interesting because in the same metro area, I-630 is the most used interstate in the state, but sometimes the routing just isn't useful, and that's what happened in this situation. Ohio is next with I-680 in Youngstown, the declining city of 60,000 residents that gets its very own downtown spur route, which shows some interesting historic design choices. It's at 43.5 thousand. Also, I have to stop and point out this inner urban loop. If you're gonna have one, make it so that we can drive in circles easily. This one requires like 3 weird exits to make your perfect circle around Youngstown. I'm looking at you, interchange in the northeast. What in the world is that? Speeding it up though, 40th is I-195 in Maryland at 43.4K. 39th is I-82 in Washington, a big L for the central part of the state at 41.5K. And 38 is I-110 in Mississippi at 41.4K, going to the struggling tourist town of Biloxi. 37th is Connecticut's I-384, a short route in the Hartford area at 41,000. And 36 is New Mexico, one of the states with 0 spur routes. Instead, they just have I-10, which is still down at 40,000. I find it hard to believe something like that is less busy than I-278 in New Jersey though, which is a very urban, though short I'll admit, interstate. It's at 39.3 thousand. In Massachusetts, I-391 leads the way at 34.7 thousand as it connects to downtown Holyoke. Oh man, what in the world will we do without that interstate? 33rd is West Virginia's I-470 at 31.4 thousand. 32nd is Wisconsin's I-535 at 29.6 thousand. 31st is Louisiana's I-510 at 27.6 thousand, and 30th is Indiana's I-865 at 27.5 thousand. Getting closer to the top half, Texas finally isn't at the top of a list, with I-110, a border crossing, at 25.5 thousand. California's right here too, with the much longer I-40 at 25.2 thousand, mostly because it only exists in the desert. Minnesota has a surprising one with I-90 at 24.4 thousand, but I guess it just has a very rural routing with not much traffic. Finally, Florida has the short and squiggly I-375 in St. Petersburg at 23.7 thousand. So we now hit our beautiful halfway point, which means all of these interstates are considered the more underused in the country. And it starts off with a bang with I-155 in Tennessee at 22.4 thousand. It has a bridge over the Mississippi, but overall the routing has low population around it and merely leads to the small city of Dyersburg. In 24th is I-86 in Idaho at 22,000. Basically everyone is coming to and from Salt Lake City, so there's not a lot of traffic that can utilize this route. It does have more drivers than North Dakota's I-194 though, a small route in downtown Bismarck that only helps people coming from the unpopulated west at 20.6 thousand. Arizona has no 3-digit interstates, but I-15 does go through the state for a short portion, and it's very rural, so it's up on this list at 20.5 thousand. South Dakota is next with I-190, a fairly useless and short route in downtown Rapid City, which pushes us below 20K at 19.6 thousand. Into our top 20 then, we have I-759 in Alabama, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know this existed, but yeah, Gadsden has its very own spur routes, but it doesn't even go straight to the downtown, so it ends up getting just 18.3 thousand drivers per segment. Maine has a really interesting one with I-495 in Portland. This used to be I-95, but they re-signed it to avoid confusion, so I-495 became an unsigned route that people don't know exists. And it has a kind of weird routing, so nobody uses it, down at 17.8 thousand. Oregon is next with I-82, which means I-82 has gone 2 for 2 with 100% of its length being included on this list, possibly making it the biggest loser of the 2-digit interstates. It's only briefly in Oregon, but it gets just 17.3 thousand drivers per segment. Surprisingly high on this list is North Carolina's I-140 in Wilmington, which forms a partial beltway around the growing city. It's at just 16.5 thousand though. Georgia's next with I-59, which again is only briefly in the state in the rural northwest corner, so it's down at 15.6 thousand. We're now into the top 15, which is where these interstates start to get pretty ugly. In 15th, we have I-381 in Bristol, Virginia, which is basically only useful on race day in Bristol, so normally it's at just 15,000. In 14th, we have an interstate that I find really funny, I-675 in Saginaw, Michigan. It's like a little loop, but it doesn't even get all the way to the downtown, more so looping around this fairly underpopulated area in the north. It's at 14.8 thousand. New York is in 13th place with another funny one, which is I-587 in Kingston, which is upstate. This one technically doesn't even connect to an interstate, simply stretching from this intersection to this intersection, with nothing in between. Very cool, New York. It's at 14.6 thousand. Missouri has I-72, which only exists for like a mile in Hannibal, so of course it's at just 13.6 thousand. Kansas has I-335 at 13.5 thousand, which I do find interesting. I guess there isn't a large pool of people going specifically from Topeka to Wichita, which makes sense thinking about it. Finally, we make it to our top 10 though, and we kick it off with a pretty interesting one, which is Wyoming with I-90. I'll admit it's in a very, very rural part of Wyoming, but in all fairness, it's one of the most important cross-country highways, so I'm surprised it's all the way down at 13.3 thousand. The next one makes more sense though. It's I-129 in Nebraska, located in the Sioux City area, connecting into Nebraska and ending immediately at an interchange with US 75. I believe it only exists to fund the crossing of the Missouri River, and judging by the area and traffic volume, it doesn't need to exist or at least be a freeway. It's at 12.3 thousand. Another one I expected lower on this list was I-520 in South Carolina, but it does make sense. It's in Georgia for most of its length, and in South Carolina there isn't a ton of traffic or reason to be on it, so it has just 11.2 thousand. Next is an interstate that is normally important, but makes sense to be on this list. It's I-70 in Utah at 10.7 thousand. This highway is known for having like nothing there, with no service for like 50 miles between Thompson Springs and the border, then another 110 miles between Green River and Salina. It's pretty crazy. 6th place is my favorite. It's I-86 in Pennsylvania, which is fun because it's in the state for around 1 mile as it dips in from New York. This portion is upkept by Pennsylvania. It's useful to Pennsylvania, but it's only in the state because of physical geography, which forced it in. So it cheated its way up here at 10,000. Into our top 5, we have Alaskan Interstate 2, which really isn't even an interstate or freeway. It's just a road from Fairbanks to Delta Junction. So it makes sense it would have just 10,000 drivers as well. Our top 4 are the real big dogs, starting with I-115 in Montana. I've talked about this highway. It's just a tiny little route that's only purpose is connecting traffic from I-15 in the west to downtown Butte, an industrial town in the middle of Montana. There isn't a ton of use here, and it probably shouldn't have been built. So it has just 8.1 thousand drivers. In third place, we have I-680 in Iowa. This is a situation that it's not a terrible interstate by any means. This is just the part that nobody drives on. It's not in Omaha, it has just one exit, which is pretty much empty, and there's no residential development there because it's in the floodplain. It's just a cheap connection to I-29 with just 6.7 thousand drivers per segment. Into second place, we have another little cheat, this time being I-93 in Vermont. The interstate is mostly in another state, but it dips into Vermont briefly before ending at I-91. The thing that gets it this high is that the route isn't really efficient by any means, and there just isn't a reason to use it. It has to go around a mountainous area, so it takes like an upside down U shape, which isn't super helpful for anyone. And there's nobody using this highway past Littleton, so it has just 5.8 thousand drivers. Finally, in first place is the whole reason I made this video, I-180 in Illinois. This is the useless empty interstate of all useless empty interstates. It's in rural Illinois, simply connecting to the tiny village of Hennepin, which used to have a large industrial plant there, but it no longer has it, meaning there's an entire interstate connecting to a tiny little village in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. The interstate's in bad condition, with a lot of it desperately needing repairs, and it doesn't even kind of need to be a freeway. There's nobody on it most of the time, getting very minimal traffic, being all the way down at 2.6 thousand drivers per segment, significantly less than any other on this list. Technically, as far as drivers total go, second place would be I-115 in Montana, and Illinois' 180 would take the cake. That's it though. I often wonder what the future holds for interstates like this. In rural areas, the only point in getting rid of them would be less upkeep, but especially in urban areas where plenty of work is going into redevelopment and dense urbanism at the moment, cities don't want these useless towering freeways. So I could see highways like I-115 in Montana, or something like I-587 in New York on the hot seat at some point soon. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week, Florida Jake, Ayuda, RFP, Sub, Rail Fanning, Nathan Nougat, Dutch Vanderlyn, Big Pasty, Big Golden Yoshi Fan, James Cermak, Rob R, Big Pasty, Jameson Headley, Colonel Potter, Eric Harris, RJC17, Jerome McCall, The Big Fruit, Andres Quintero, Jesse Cook, JL, The Autistic City Skylines Fan, Richard Law, Alexander Lichko, Lorda Halliday, Charles Watson, Aiden Kyles, The Happy Hodag, Grant Dickerson, Midwest Rail Fan, Mick Kastner, D, Stephen Phillips, CJ Brick, Resident Contrarian, House of the Wolf, Brock Sanders, Stephen Priestman, SB Wilder, Florida Jake, Alex Williams, Mickey Tapartanoff, Kurt Ainsley, KMS162, Bryson Rosebud 4, Darkbird, Wolfling 73, Snyder Swine, Benjamin Whitings, and Ryan Devins.